All right, are we ready to get started with the music section? So kind of just reiterating what Cowboy was saying earlier. For this part of the score sheet, for these two judges, judges 3 and 4, if you will, you are only judging what is actually performed during the actual music section. So skills that are performed, stunts, tumbling, anything that's performed in the cheer section is not scored by you. So if a team only stunts in their cheer portion only, for some reason, then that reflects in their score, meaning that they did no stunts in the music, so that would be a 0. So we're only scoring what is done in the music part. Definitely an emphasis on execution and difficulty, but also promoting safety. So the point is we're wanting teams to do skills that they're capable of doing and performing well. And again, the most important for you guys is making sure that you're assigning the points appropriately. And remember, we're doing what's called compared scoring. So you're scoring each team based on what the other teams in their division are doing as well. So our very first team who performs for the day is going to really kind of set the bar. And from that point on, you're scoring every single team based on what they've done compared to each other. Does that make sense to everybody? So you're going to hear me say this over and over about scripting and how important scripting is for you guys, just to make sure that you are keeping track and you do know what every single team did, because we do have ranges, and we're going to go through those in great detail. But within those ranges, you've got to make sure that we're assigning the correct point totals to make sure that the team who did the most difficult stunts with the most amount of people is being scored appropriately, and we're allowing enough points between teams when needed. For this part of the score sheet, building is 40 points total of the 70. Jumps and tumbling are 10 points each, and we split those in execution 5 points and difficulty for 5 points. Dance is 10 points, and we'll get kind of into dance on what we're looking for in dance and how much you have to dance, but it is a 10-point category, so it is equivalent to all the other skills on the score sheet. And then you guys each have a 5-point overall score, and how that works is each one of you has 5 points that you assign on your own personal opinion of the routine, and then those 4 are actually averaged for one 5-point total score. You can go to the next slide. We're going to start with the music section, and Cowboy did a very good job of explaining how exactly what we're looking for and how we scored the execution side. So some of the main things, again, the appearance of the stunt. We're looking for the lines from the tops to the bottom, from start to finish. We're looking at bases. Are the legs close together, or do we have one that's really wide apart? Are they standing close together? Are arms locked out? Is the top lifting up in her shoulders? Is she holding her weight when she loads into her stunt? Are legs together? Are legs apart? So we're looking, and again, you guys are going to have a scribing sheet it's going to have different boxes, and each one it'll be stunts, tumble, and various things on the score sheet. But in that, you need to be very specific in your comments on your scripting sheet. And you need to write down, and again, Cowboy did mention how you're going to be working with each other. So you'll always have a partner. And the two of you really need to focus on one side of the floor while still watching all of them. But with all this happening so quick, it's so important that you make notes on bobble on right stunt, bobble in the middle, legs apart, and making sure you're taking good notes, because you're going to need those to compare what to score that team based on what the other team's executions at the event are looking like. Other things that we're looking at is, again, it's the stunt section. So you're looking at the transitions. Are they clean from start to finish? Are the bases resisting? Are the bases working together? Even little things like he showed in the video in the cheer, where they do the spin down and the top catches her leg out wide. So again, it's so important that you're writing down very specific details of all the stunts that you see. And then again, an important part of the scripting is also making sure you write down the numbers of how many stunts, and we'll get into that more on the difficulty side. The overall point of the execution is, how do the stunts look? How are they executed? Are they solid from start to finish? Are there bobbles? Are there falls? In the execution side, for any falls, this is one of the areas that you're going to be taking off points the most. We don't give you an actual score that for each fall. That is, again, for you to for you and your partner to decide on what you're going to take off for each fall. But the most important part is making sure you're consistent. And even with falls, there are different degrees of falls, and making sure that you are scoring those accordingly, because a fall that maybe comes into a cradle position is much different than a fall that has 4 people laying on the ground and the top not being supported or help caught. So again, that's for you guys to make sure that you're staying consistent and assigning points and taking off points for falls and the degree of the falls that we have for them. Synchronizations, another big one that goes into this score, and it is 10 points, but there are a lot of things. Again, that's why I say it's so important that you're scripting and writing notes and comments on every single stunt that is performed with them. Any questions at all about the execution part? Again, the most important thing is just to reiterate, again, you are taking points off of them for falls, and we don't give you a total. There is a safety judge that does take off a specific amount for falls, but again, you are also doing falls. And also remember that a fall in a stunt is going to hit the score sheet in numerous places. It's going to hit the score sheet in difficulty. It's going to hit the score sheet in execution, in your overall effect. So again, and then we do want that. We do feel, because we're really trying to reiterate to teams and emphasize to teams that hitting a solid executed team within your capability is what is going to score well at a competition. The next part we're going to go into is the difficulty. This is again a 10-point category. And the best thing for you guys judging and to make this process go smooth at your events is to really have a good understanding of the pyramid, the progression pyramid that we have that lists all the skills. And for any of you guys who have any kind of questions about what some of the skills are, Casey's done such a great job in Cowboy helping with the website, and each skill is listed as it is written on the pyramid progression sheet. So I definitely recommend that you definitely study and have a really good understanding of that before you go to your first event. Because if you've not looked at it, it's very hard to script a skill for every single section and then have to go try to find them on your pyramid. You don't have all the time to do that. So you need to be very familiar with that sheet. I would highlight on certain skills that you might see a lot, just so you know for quick reference on where each stunt's going to live in all the categories. Because when we start scoring it, you have to know the difference in a super elite skill compared to an elite skill, because it's going to definitely throw off the range when we're placing them in the point totals. Also note that the progression sheet is not all-inclusive. Other skills can be performed, but we just try to put as many varieties in there as we could. So some skills may not be in that progression sheet. That's for you to use your common cheer knowledge and your expertise to find where that stunt fits into that category, and make sure that, again, looking at things as the grips, how many times are the bases spinning, or where's the bases, their point of start to finish. So taking all those into account to figure out where to put that into the progression sheet. Again, in all of the stunts, think of it as a teaching progression from lowest to hardest skills. And even when you're scripting your sheets, it's very important to make sure that you know making sure that each stunt group does the same skill. Because we're going to show you guys some videos, and that's why we really want you guys to use you and your partner and talk and work together to make sure that you get and you script down what the team is actually competing with. A few other things, just basic things and knowledge for stunts and difficulty. Again, the number of bases that are used. Obviously, and we'll go through this in a second again, using front spots is going to lower difficulty. It's going to lower you a skill level, but it still keeps people in range. So within these ranges that are suggested, you have a sliding scale that you will help place teams based on if teams are using front spots or how many stunts a team uses with the number of athletes. So in simple stunt group terms, if a team has 16 members, how many stunt groups can they actually put up, or how many stunts can they actually do? Anybody? With 16, you can actually do 5, because it takes 3 people to do 1 stunt if we're living in the single base world. But for group stunts, we're generally looking for 4. So again, in your scribing sheet, you need to write down, we're always going to know how many athletes are on each team. but it's also so important to make sure you're putting down how many stunts they're performing. Rather than just scripting down that they did a full up, you need to write down that 4 groups did a full up. And then also keeping in mind that a team attempts 4 full ups and only 2 of them hit. How many stunts should you write down on your sheet? 2. You are only scoring what a team performs and executes that stays in the air. So falls do not count when it goes into difficulty. So when we get more into the breakdown of majority and all that, we'll go through that a little more in detail of how teams can score, etc. And then just a few other things with the difficulty. Again, things like synchronization and other things like that can go into difficulty, meaning that if a team is doing anything that's synchronized as a full group, technically is harder than a team doing individual skills. So just keeping that in mind. Through the difficulty, we're looking at all things, including the transitions between stunts. How do they get into it? Do they do anything in between it? And how do they get out of it? So making sure that we script everything well and you reward teams who are doing all of them as well. The next little sheet here is going to go through and kind of explain how we get to our ranges. So for any team who performs, we take the 3 hardest stunts that they perform based off of our progression pyramid, and that's going to set the range for them to score in. So once we have the 3 hardest skills, it then goes into the point total. But so, for example here, if we look at here on the team size, for a team that has anywhere from 15 and below, they are expected to do 2 stunts to get into the majority. So if a team has 15 athletes and they do 2 stunts and one of those stunts falls, are they in the majority now? They are not. So anytime this happens, with that stunt, whatever that individual skill is, we drop that a level. So for example, say we have a team we've got 15 athletes, they perform 2 double ups and 1 falls. That skill is now scored at an elite level skill. Since they did not meet the majority, wherever that skill lives, we drop it 1 level. Does that make sense to everybody? And so if that team, say that team they've got 15 members and they do 3 double ups and 1 falls. Does that team meet the majority? Yes, because they still had the 2 stunts that completed. Now, remember that we talk about in the scoring ranges, these are suggested. So a team who attempts 3 stunts and drops 1, you can lower their score within the range, and you can drop them out of the range if you feel necessary. So the ranges that we have, which will be on the next slide, are suggested ranges. So again, it's so important that you're scripting in great detail the number of athletes they have and figuring out if they're going to fall into these majority. For tosses we assume that they require 3 bases plus a spot. So in the toss world, we're looking at 4 total bases for that stunt. Still keeps them. That doesn't necessarily follow the majority rule. Does that make sense to everybody? So if a team has 16 athletes and they use all 4 bases, then, well, for 16, they're going to need 3. So that would put them in the majority, correct? Does that make sense to everybody? Yes?
While you're talking about tosses, can you tell them about the tosses within that 3 hardest skills performed?
Yep. So for tosses, and really for any skill, for the tosses, ideally, only 1 toss can count as one of your hardest skills. So if a team chooses to do 3 different tosses, you would just take whatever the hardest level toss is, and that only counts for 1 of their stunts. Does that make sense to everybody? Mm-hmm.
When you say 1, if they are required to have, if their majority is 2, then you're talking about the exact same toss. You can't have stunt group number 1 being one kind of toss that was here, and stunt group number 2.
Correct. Yep. So they have to be the exact same skill. And again, we're looking at if they're scattering baskets throughout sections, and they're doing one here and one there, that doesn't count as the majority. We're looking for what skills are performed together, and then the basket can only count for one of those skills. The same goes for anything. If a team does a double-up extension, and they do it 3 times, the double-up extension only counts for one of those stunts, or a full-up extension.
Back to the basket toss question, just so let's say a team decided they were going to do that. They were going to throw a full and a kick full, okay? So you would take the kick full if everything else was working out the way it was supposed to, and you would drop it a level because it didn't hit the number needed, and you still may use that, but you would drop it a level because they didn't have 2 of them if 2 was what was required. Does that make sense? So if a team happens to do that, you still may utilize the basket, but you'll drop it a level because they didn't do enough of them. So from a coach's standpoint, logically, I would go, if I've only got a full and I got a kick full, I'm going to throw 2 fulls to stay as high as possible, and it makes it look nicer anyway. Okay?
One of the next big things for this are if stunt groups use an extra base. So say we've got a stunt group, they've got 3 people. You have your back spot, your 2 bases, and then we have our top. Say they use an extra stunter, whether it be a front spot or anytime they're supporting weight. If the team is using, if 50% or more of the stunt groups use an extra person, we drop that to a lower level as well. So for example, if we have a team who has 2 stunts and one of them uses an additional spotter, and then we're in our 15. So we've got 15, they have 2 stunts, one of them uses a spotter, and they're doing, I keep using a double up just because it's a stunt I can think of that's in the super elite. So they do double ups. One uses a front spot, one does not. Do they meet their majority? They do meet majority, yes. However, because 50% or more of the stunt groups are using an extra spotter, that stunt drops a level. So that super elite stunt is now an elite stunt because we said 2 stunt groups, 50%, one of them is using a front spot, it drops a lower level. Now, say we have 2 stunt groups, they both double up, and one of them has a front spot, and then one falls. The one without the front spot falls. So now I have one double up with the front spot. That's going to drop 2 skill sets now because number 1, they're no longer in majority, correct? And they're using an extra base. So that skill went from a super elite skill to an advanced skill. Does that make sense to everybody? So again, the tricky part is that 50%. So always remember 50% or more of the stunts use front spots, we drop it a skill level. And in that case they also dropped, so they lost their majority, so they were dinged twice. And then they're also hit on the execution in your overall as well. Are there questions about this? Did we explain that enough for everybody to understand that part?
I just want to note one thing too. When we're talking about an extra base, we're also talking about an extra person that could be catching on a dismount. That would be considered an extra base. Anybody that's really providing support to perform the skill hands-on is going to drop them a level. On the opposite end of that, if you have someone that is just standing in front of a stunt and their hands off, that would not count as a hands-on base. So you wouldn't be dropping a level if you just have someone out in front not touching and supporting that skill.
And this, my last little note on here is similar skills within a progression that may not be listed. It's using your common sense to understand where that would fit appropriately. So something you don't see on the score sheet, say they've done some modified version of a skill, make your best judgment on whether you think that skill fits either right in the middle of a range or higher or lower depending on how the skill is performed. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So here's the exact way we're actually going to be scoring teams. So once a team's gone, you've scripted everything, and you have your list, and you've picked your 3 hardest stunts that this team has performed. From there, you decide on what those skills are. Are they super? Are they elite, advanced, or intermediate? And what you're going to do is, from those 3 skills, they fit into this pyramid. So you'll see at the very top, the purple represents super elite. So if a team does 3 super elite skills, their range is going to start at a 9.6 to a 10. So again, if a team is scoring, if you look on the sides as well where it says on the second one, they did 2 super elite and the gray one has a 3 and a 4. What those boxes mean is either is it an elite and advanced skill or an intermediate and advanced skill. And from there, again, you'll in your range use common sense to score someone slightly higher. So say we have a team who does a super elite, and then an elite skill. They would score slightly higher than a team who would do a super elite, and an advanced skill. But they all still live in that same range. But your job, again, is making sure taking good notes, comparing them to the team who went before or after, or where you think they should be living in their score, and then you make sure you get them slightly higher based on what the skill was performed. Does this make sense to everybody, this whole breakdown on the side here? Remembering that this is a suggested range, so you are not stuck and have to live in all of these per se. So say a team is still meeting all their majority requirements here, but they have falls. But how this reads is if a team is falling, so they still, if the appropriate amount of athletes are doing the skill, they can still get in that 9.6 range. But you do have the freedom to possibly drop that a little bit. And we'll show you some examples that kind of help explain that a little bit. But say a team has 15 athletes, they do 3 stunts, which is one more than their majority, but that one stunt keeps falling every single time. You don't have to give them the 9.6. Does that make sense to everybody? Because they are in the range because 2 of their stunts have got them into the requirement, but since one stunt is continually falling, you can drop that score out of that range if you feel necessary. Again, based on the team that they're competing against, which is all the teams in that category. So again, using your common sense and your comparative scoring to decide where you want to put that team. See some of the other things that are for the sliding, again, more stunts, or a team with 16 performing 5 stunts at times, or using all 4 stunts with their multi-group. If they use those in every stunt, that team should be scoring higher within that sliding range compared to a team who has the same number of athletes but is performing less stunts. So when you want to make sure that you do give them a good enough gap to reward the team who used all stunt groups to the max potential. Other things to look at on here, the technique and the grips and how much they move. A lot of this is going to take place in our spinning skills. And that's why, again, it's very important for you guys to work with each other and talk to each other and make sure that you know and can see the difference in a modified full up versus a full up, or a double up versus a ruby slipper, because how much the bases spin does impact the difficulty. The more the bases spin, the less difficult the stunt. So we're looking really at how much the top is spinning in relation to the bases. Yes?
For some people last week, ruby slipper was a new term, so you could just.
Yeah, the ruby tip.
And target.
Yeah, the target, our term target is anytime feet come together. And the ruby slipper is a modified version of a full up that I can't sit here and demonstrate it for you. We did get videos of it.
Did you want me to come up?
Would you come up here and perform it with us?
Yeah, actually, with the Ruby Slipper, if you go on YouTube and type in Ruby Slipper, you will find multiple people trying to teach it. And basically, I was going to mention to you, one of the modified skills says cross-leg modifications. It's lower than a regular full-up or traditional full-up. Ruby Slippers, although they technically don't cross legs, they start in this position here, as Medea said, 4th position if you're in ballet, which I did not know that. But anyway, so they don't technically cross their legs like the modified that I would teach, hand, toe, or heel, toe. They start in this, but it's still considered a type of cross. It would be in that lower range with the other versions. And everybody know what we're talking about now. Their hips are already turned, so they're already a quarter away around their full, and both bases are able to stay in contact and they move. One base moves a half, the other 2 move a quarter. That's basically what it is. So it's a modification of a modified full-up.
So again, that's why, saying it again, it's so important to script, just so we make sure we get those differences when we're giving our scores and rewarding the teams who are doing the more difficult within that sliding range. A few other things about the sliding range. Even though we're only getting setting a score based on the 3 hardest stunts, many teams will continue to do other stunts. So the more stunts a team is doing, that should slide them up in a range. So when I'm done scripting my entire stunt section, I'm going to write out my number of total stunts performed. So if I have a team who has a team of 15, they have 3 stunt groups they do, and those stunt groups do 4 different sets of stunts. How many total stunts is that? Anybody? So they do 3 stunts, they have 3 stunt groups, and they do 4 different stunts. To me, I'm writing 12 down, because that team performed 12 skills. So when I'm going back and comparing from one team to the next in this sliding range, a team who does 12 compared to a team who just does 9 should score higher than the team who did 9 within that range. Again, based on what the skills that are performed. Everybody good on that?
Just wanted to mention one other thing is we've already accounted for dropping a skill if they're out of majority, but you can still look at a team, and if a team has only 1 stunt group when their majority was, let's say, 4 stunt groups, you would then account for them only doing 1 skill within that sliding score. So you can slide that down if you see a team that is only performing it with 1 stunt group when they really should be doing it with 4 or 5 stunt groups.
The next one we're going to talk about is going to be pyramids. And for pyramids, this is pretty much everything is scored nearly the same. The only difference on this is we don't use a majority number. So a team who has 16 athletes, one athlete can do, we're looking for one athlete to do their 3 hardest skills for their range. So you could have a team that has 5 stunt groups, and we're still looking for the one doing the 3 hardest skills to get them into their range. Now, that's where we can also now use our sliding scale within that range for teams who are using multiple people doing the hard skills together. Does that make sense to everybody? So if I have a team who has 4 stunt groups, and in their pyramid, the one girl, they do like a little triangle pyramid, the back does straight up extensions, but the one group does double up, and they do only one girl, there is no majority. So that one person gets us to our difficulty range. Did I say that clear enough for everybody to understand that? From there, everything else just goes off that pyramid progression, very similar to the partner stunt. The only difference, and this is going to be, if you look at your pyramid progression sheet, there's a lot of things that differ in difficulty based on the bracers helping them. So the bracing stuff is where the pyramids are going to be different, and the flips. And it's always going to be based on where things start and finish in a difficulty progression for you to slide them higher or lower. And again, say you have a team of 12, so we can do 3 stunts in our pyramid. Again, say they use the middle group to do all their difficulty to get in their range. Then team B, 12 kids, 3 stunt groups, they use 2 people to do all their difficulty. They both get into the range, but common sense tells me that the second team is going to score higher because they had 2 groups performing all of the hard skills. So I'm going to make sure that I have a good difference within my sliding range to reward that team for having 2 groups do it compared to 1. Does that make sense to everybody? So pretty much all rules apply from the stunt that we just talked about, minus the majority. So again, say we've got a team of 15 and they do 3 stunts, and they use a front spot for all of their stunts. Remember we talked about we only need 1 to get into our difficulty part, but since they're using that 1 used a front spot, I'm now dropping her into a lower skill level because of the front spots. So we still do the drop a skill level for front spots, but we do not do it for the majority for pyramids. All right, for the jumps. For this, 5 points is difficulty and 5 points is execution. And again, we've talked a lot about being consistent and being consistent the entire day. And jumps is one that is going to take you, and it's got to be, scripting is very important, and being consistent is very important, because to get the difficulty score on this, we have a little example of you. There's 3 levels to get in, or 3 ranges, so to speak, to get into. You have an elite, advanced, and intermediate ranges. To get into the highest range requires a triple jump. The medium range requires a double jump, and the lowest range requires just a single jump. For the difficulty of that, within that given range is going to depend on the jumps that are performed and the amount of people that are performing them. That's why it is so important for you guys to script, because if one team comes out there and full squad does a triple toe touch, and then my next team comes out there and most of their team does triple toe touch, who should be scoring higher? The team who does the full. We don't give numbers for majority and we don't give numbers for most. That's common knowledge. I can look at a team and know that the 4 girls in the back line did not do a jump. So that's how I determine that most of this team jumped, or half of this team jumped. So the next part is the triple jump. So if Team A does full squad triple jumps and Team B does full squad triple jumps, they should be scoring the exact same score in difficulty. Okay? So once you have that score, you need to make sure that every team who does full squad triple toe touches is scoring that exact score in difficulty. So, and again, for you most likely you're going to want to score the highest, in my head, is going to be a team that does full squad and does 3 different jumps, all connected. Another thing, doing a triple, for example, maybe they do a triple tuck jump. Remember we said all these ranges that we give are suggested ranges. So if a team's doing 3 basic level jumps, your basic jumps, a pencil jump, a tuck jump, a spread eagle, you don't have to put them in the highest range. That highest range is for teams who are doing the advanced jumps to get into that. So just because you do a triple does not necessarily mean that you have to get into that highest part of the range. So use your common judgment to make sure that you're rewarding teams who are doing the elite level skills. Tumbling has nothing to do with the score at all. A jump to tumbling will slightly increase your tumbling score, but not your jump score. So jump is only the jump portion. Also, a team can do 15 jumps, and it does not matter in difficulty. You are basing difficulty off of 3 jumps. So if a team does 6 jumps in a row, and 3 of them are spread eagles, and the rest are your pike, hurdle, toe touch, that team is judged the same as the team who did the pike, hurdle, toe touch. They don't get more points because they did additional jumps after that. Which we do in every other category. Teams score higher in the sliding scale for doing more skills, except for jumps. So we're scoring 3 and 3 only, regardless if a team does 9. Okay? So for the execution of this one, for this we're looking at the approach. You're looking at where the feet start and where the feet finish. You're looking at arm placement. You're looking at leg flexibility. Again, the synchronization. To me, the synchronization is really what can help drive that score up, because a team could all have, a slightly above average level jumps, but the synchronization is so sharp and clean compared to a team who may have all hyperextended but have poor motions and poor landings. Does that make sense? So really look at the overall look of the jumps. Are they tight? Are they all level? Are they all similar? Again, you guys know from judging, most likely the best jumpers are probably right in the front row. So when I watch jumps, I tend to kind of look at waist level below, because I'm trying to look to see all the legs in the back. If I don't see many legs in the back, it means that most of us are pretty much jumping the same level, which is good, which is what we want. If I have a lot of legs I'm seeing, that's going to affect my execution score, because all jumps aren't close to the same level. So then I make sure I write that on my sheet, that great flexibility or not great flexibility, good extension, looking for the most common thing you see done incorrectly in jumps is the chest being brought down. So we're looking for a team who's got good motions, chest up, legs come up, not chest reaching for your legs to get that 5 points. Any questions at all about jumps? Yeah, okay. Moving on to our tumbling. For this section, it is 10 points, 5 points execution, 5 points difficulty. Running and standing are combined in that 5-point difficulty score. Does a team have to do both standing and running tumbling? No. But again, remember we're doing comparative scoring. So I'm going to score a team higher who does do both a variety of standing and a variety of running tumbling, based on all the teams who are going, obviously. For the difficulty, another thing we're looking at, we're looking for group tumbling. The most amount of athletes doing a skill together is going to be what drives my difficulty score. And there's a progression sheet that has all the skills listed in progression of tumbling. So we get this question quite often about, well, if I only have one full, you're saying that you're looking at group tumbling, so I shouldn't do the full because it's not now group tumbling. No, you should do the full, and you should somehow incorporate it in to go with the running tumbling. That's all as a group. So the group skill is my driving score. Everything else additional gives me my higher range in the difficulty, or lower, based on the amount of athletes performing the skills. So say you have a team of 15, and you've got 5 girls who can do fulls, and they do them all together. And then I've got 5 girls who do tucks, I put them all together, and then I got 5 girls who can't tumble. So again, on my scripting sheet, I'm writing 5 round off handspring tucks, good sync, 5 round off handspring fulls. So 10 of 15 tumbled. My group scores, both of them were both of 5, so they are showing group tumbling. They show me a variety. I'm going to give them a fairly good score because they had the 5 fulls. I'm not giving them a perfect score because 5 girls did not tumble. So a third of the girls didn't tumble. So you're using all those things to get to your difficulty score for tumbling out of 5 points. The key being the driver, the group tumbling. What do we do with the most amount of people to get my base score? And then my running fulls are going to start putting me up higher, and then some of my variety tumbling might also put me higher. If I've got teams doing round off tuck through to tucks or whip to tucks, and anything variety and extra is going to help drive that score. Same goes for standing, just the same. And then execution for this. For the tumbling execution, again, it's 5 points. So if a team does, say they don't have very much tumbling, and they do squat forward rolls and squat cartwheels, but they are done perfectly, they can score a 5 because the execution has nothing to do with the difficulty. For any of these categories, execution has nothing to do with difficulty. So now that team who did the forward rolls and cartwheels is likely going to score below a 1 in the difficulty, but since they did them perfect, I'm giving them a 5. So teams who don't have tumbling does not mean they can't be competitive. That's kind of my point here. Does that make sense to everybody? Because as long as I'm executing whatever I do perfectly, I've got to give them the scores for it. The same goes for all these categories. Difficulty does not influence the execution score for any category that we have on the score sheet. Let's see.
Josh.
Yeah.
A couple things. Number one, you can see how we're setting this up to emphasize safety. Even on some of the videos we've already shown, and you'll see this at state championships or whatever, or any competitions, you're going to see teams from time to time force tumbling. We want them to get away from that. We're kind of wanting to get coaches away from thinking only on difficulty to begin with and to think about execution of everything. But with tumbling, we want them to get away from saying, she's almost got it, so I'm going to put it in, and then she lands in a push-up position, or she lands on her head, or whatever it is on this tumbling. So that's why those perfect forward rolls and cartwheels get a 5 possibly in execution, and then of course they score almost nothing in the difficulty but you're rewarding them where you should, and really hurting them where you should too. So it's all going to come out equal in comparison to the teams. The other thing we're going to be telling the coaches this afternoon is like that example Josh just used. So we're going to tell the coaches, okay, you've got 5 that do fulls, 5 that do tucks, 5 that can't do anything. What now, thinking as a coach, what am I going to do? What's going to help me the most? Well, what I would try to do is I would actually take the 5 that do round off back handspring fulls and the 5 that do the round off tucks, and I would throw 10 round off tucks, assuming that most of these fulls should be throwing a tuck in a progression. So I'm going to throw 10 round off back handspring tucks. And then if I'm smart and I've saved 8 counts, maybe later on I have a stunt sequence go up and I can run the fulls front to back, round off back handspring fulls. So I still show the fulls, but now I've set my driver up as 10 of something, which is really going to help the overall visual of this team. So that's the kind of stuff we'll be telling the coaches about tumbling. And from your standpoint, that's how you're going to compare one team to another. Were they smart? Did they put themselves in the best positions possible while still showing those occasional specialty passes they might have? Okay.
Everybody good on tumbling? Okay. The very last one we're going to go over is the dance. And dance is 10 points. And this is one of those categories that the two of us may have very different styles of dance that we prefer. So we want you guys to get away from the subjectivity of it and basing the score off of your own personal opinion. Rather, we want you to use the indicators that you guys have on that sheet. Are they sharp? So think of like the checkbox things. Are the motions sharp? Do they have good motion placement? Are they, do they show levels? Do they have formation changes? Is it visually appealing? So all of those is what's going to give us our base score. And for all of these, I would say it's probably fair to start around a 7 for anyone's dance who goes. 7's kind of like the range to think to start. And from there, if they've got superior sharpness, I'm going to start going up higher. And then to give them the full points, does it fit with the music well? Is it entertaining to watch? Does it enhance the routine? So those dances are the ones that are going to be scoring in our high 9s. The 7 dance is going to be the one that is simple, to the point, basic, but still kind of hits all the indicators. When you're dropping below that, you probably need to write some good notes on their score sheet to tell them why you're scoring their dance so low. Because it's hard for me as a coach to get my score sheet that has me at a 5 on dance out of 10 points, and you've not told me anything of why you gave me that 5. So if you're dropping teams that low, check yourself and make sure that they really do warrant that low, and give them some feedback on that. Because a 5 is a very low score in a 10-point category. That's a 50%. That's an F. So I kind of think of the dance as like in school grades. Like, was that dance an A? If so, I need to be scoring them in the 9s. Everyone starts at RC, and I move up from there. But again, the key things: motion placement, sharpness. Use those to drive your score, and use the likability of it and how well it fits in the routine to get you to your extra points. There is no required amount. That's been a big question. There's no required amount that a team has to dance. But keep in mind, this is a 10-point category, which is the same as almost all of our other categories. So teams need to fit in the correct amount of dance to fill a 10-point score. So a team who goes out there and does 1 8-count of dance, and then you have a team who does 5 8-counts, the 5 8-count dance is going to score higher. It should score higher. Because, again, in a 10-point category, it's very hard to get a full 10-point dance in an 8-count or even 2 8-counts. So there's no required amount, but, again, rewarding teams who are doing more than 2 8-counts, I would say. But, again, it's comparative scoring, so we're comparing them from Team A to Team B. But, again, at the same time, we don't want to see 10 8-counts of dance either. But it is 10 points, so reward the teams who are fulfilling the requirements within that. The very last one we have is going to be the overall score. And we talked about this before. This is your one score that you give on your own. And all 4 scores from the judges are then averaged to give 1 score on the final score sheet. So for this one, this is your overall effect of the routine. Did it flow well? Were the transitions quick in and out of things? Was there dead time in the routine? Was it too slow? Did it look rushed? Did all the stunts hit well? So again, remember we talked about stunts dropping. This is another area where stunt drops are gonna affect my overall score. And this is again kind of where I'm almost ranking my teams. So I've got two teams that were comparable, but Team A was just a little better. So Team A I'm gonna have them higher in my overall score to help give them just a little bit of points, because I just said I like them better. Two teams who I like exactly the same, exact amount of falls, exact amount of execution, you can score them the exact same as well. So again, this is your one score. You're welcome to talk to your neighbor about it, but she's doing her own score. So again, that's always going to be average. So that is for you to give your own personal opinion. This is the one spot on the score sheet where it is your personal opinion of how this routine should be scored overall, and it's a 5-point category. Yeah.
I have just a quick question overall. So right here, everything is 1 decimal point. Is that how we're scoring, is 1 decimal point, like 5.1, 5.3?
Yes.
1.25?
Yeah, just to a tenth, always. Yep, and you can use all of them, 0 all the way up to your 0.9s. And I encourage you to use every single one of them, because again, with such small ranges for teams, those tenths are going to decide who the winner needs to be. So make sure you're assigning those points appropriately.
All right, cool. So we're gonna put a little bow on this and take any questions that y'all may have. Just a couple of things that I want to emphasize before we take any of your last questions. First thing, in regards to the overall, one of the key things to think about also, Josh was talking about the flow of the routine, and we talked earlier about how do I finish in one piece and flow quickly into the other. Think about it this way. If you're watching, I tend to watch the middle strip a lot in a floor, and if I've noticed by the end of the routine that lots of people have crossed that middle piece, that routine to me was not set up as well as another team that comes out and doesn't do a lot of that. So instead, no matter how I finished my dance, I had 4 people who could stunt together, as opposed to how I finished my dance, and this top has to be with those 2 people who are in the back of dance. And so now I've got to start moving bodies around. So I'm going to be looking, that's one of the big flow things you're going to look for. Watch that middle line, see how often they cross or don't cross. That's going to be reflected in your overall score. Okay. And the other thing, just as an overall, just to kind of wrap this up, in regards to being what's considered a really good official. Okay. What you guys should be thinking about is 2 things. Number 1, I need to get all the teams in the most correct order that I think by what I see, but that doesn't mean, like, you see a team come out and you go, wow, they're the best team I've seen today, they're awesome, and I'm going to score them and make sure they win, and you go high, 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 high across the board. A team that wins a competition doesn't necessarily have to win each category. And that's key. That's what shows me if officials are really good or not. So you have Team A that wins, and they should have. But they weren't really very good tumblers compared to the third team, like Team B. So when I look at Team A's and Team B's scores, in tumbling, I should have B higher. Overall, though, all the other categories, because they really were, Team A was better, and they're going to win. So the winning team does not have to win all the categories. And you as an official need to make sure that that's how it's coming out, because that's what showed, like if I was reviewing scores, that's the kind of things I would look for, is were they good within each of the categories in a comparison? And if you're doing that, you're being a really good official, as opposed to officials who say they're really good, they're not as good, I want them to win, I'm going to make sure they win by hitting them, they're going to beat them in every category, and then you have to defend why this team not won, but why they beat them in tumbling when they had 2 back handsprings and they had full squat tucks. Okay? Now that may be all they had. So you have to be, as an official, you have to look at the totals and then go across also and say, am I doing well comparing teams within the major categories as well? Everybody comfortable and understand that? That's what makes you a really good official as opposed to a good official. Okay? Does anybody have any questions overall? Any questions at all? Does everybody feel pretty comfortable with this? I know there's some changes and there's going to be some mindset changes, not drastic, but some, and especially for some people who are really used to using guides for a lot of things. You got a little more free reign here to move around and to decide, who you think should be where. But I think once you get used to it, I think you're going to see that between you and your partner, you're going to know what's going on and be able to set pretty good scores right off the bat. Okay?
And just so important to really study that progression sheet, because you don't have a lot of time between teams when you're judging. So it's very hard to write them all down, then try to go find where they all live on that form. So the more familiar you are with that, it's going to be much easier for you when you actually start judging.
Yep.
So.
Anything else, Casey?
If you do find that you have any questions, feel free to submit those on the NYSPHSAA website so that way everyone sees that response on there. That spreadsheet should be up within a couple days. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming today and good luck judging this year.